In front of a high school, several professionals were setting up a magic array. Here at Western Sea High School, where over 100 grade 12 students were about to undergo a class transfer. The students sat upright, listening attentively to Principal Lu Yun's speech. Lu Yun was a man of few words. He hoped that each and every one of them would reach the height of their fellow student Su Qianxing and become pillars of humanity. Su Qianxing, mentioned by Principal Lu, was once a student of the high school who successfully transferred to become a revered divine holy mage. Currently, he was a prominent figure at level 80. Principal Lu often used his achievements to inspire and guide the students. As Lin gazed at the transfer array circle, which was nearing completion, his eyes flickered with a mix of seriousness and anticipation. Having been in this world for several years, he knew what kind of world it was. This world was intertwined with gaming elements, where people underwent class transfers during their last year of high school. Clearing dungeons, exploring hidden realms, joining battlefields, or slaying monsters in the wilderness. All of these activities yielded experience points, gaining experience, leveling up, mastering skills, and enhancing one's strength. Fighting against various demonic creatures, fighting to carve out a space for humanity. Countless ancestors of the human race shed blood and sacrificed their lives, which eventually led to the present way of life. The success rate of class transfers had long reached 100%. The only difference was the quality of the professions. The most popular professions in this world were undoubtedly the combat-oriented class followed by support classes, while the lifestyle classes ranked last. However, this was just a rough classification. There are also the legendary level and rare professions which were extremely rare. Here in the Western Sea City, with not a single legendary level profession emerging in the past decade. As a beam of light shot up into the sky, the transfer array circle had been fully enchanted. Lin followed the group, contemplating in his heart what profession he would transfer into. No one could accurately predict what profession they would become. Suddenly, someone tapped Lin on the shoulder. Gao Yang, wearing a smile, approached and asked what profession he wanted to transfer into. Lin glanced at him, shook his head, and didn't answer. Gao Yang continued with a smile. "Come on, tell me. It's okay to share. Let me tell you, I really want to become a knight. Just imagine, with my tall and sturdy appearance, being a knight would surely be imposing. Plus, I could protect the ladies." Lin didn't like to talk much. Despite his excellent academic performance, he had few friends. Many people thought there was something wrong with him. Gao Yang exchanged a few words with him before leaving to talk to someone else. In those brief conversations, there were voices tinged with envy and bitterness. Many people felt that Lin was too aloof and arrogant because of his good grades. Gao Yang smiled and said, "Actually, Lin just simply doesn't like talking." Unfortunately, no one believed this statement. Either way, Lin didn't feel the need to provide further explanation. The group arrived in front of the array circle, and Principal Lu walked up to an elderly man with great respect. "Master Zhang, I appreciate your help today," he said. Master Zhang had a warm smile, appearing to be a very amiable old man. He didn't conceal his information, and everyone could see it. Zhang Qian, level 52, Array Grandmaster. Lin was slightly surprised to see that he was an Array Grandmaster, and his level was an impressive 52. Array Grandmasters were considered rare support class professions and were not commonly seen. Moreover, they possessed tremendous power. Soon, Principal Lu Yun brought out a list and started reading off the name of the students. The first student called was Shu Da. Shu Da responded and entered the transfer array with a hint of nervousness. As the array roared to life, accompanied by a dazzling light, Shu Da's class transfer concluded. Lifestyle profession, farmer. Shu Da's face turned slightly pale. He hadn't expected to become a farmer. It was still a decent profession since everyone needed to eat, right? After stepping down from the array, Shu Da's close friends comforted him. The second person called hurried into the array. Again, a dazzling light enveloped the scene. Lifestyle profession, chef. The student was pleased with his profession because his father was also a chef. It could be seen as following in his father's footsteps. The third, the fourth. One person after another went up for their class transfers, and most of them ended up with lifestyle professions. Master Zhang and Principal Lu Yun sighed. So far, not a single rare profession had appeared. Master Zhang stood beside Principal Lu as the architect of the transfer array, and he was well aware of the class transfer situation. Lu called out another name. Charlotte responded promptly. Before setting off, Charlotte glanced at Lin, her eyes flashing with a hint of provocation. She and Lin were known as the two geniuses of the high school. However, in terms of academic performance, Lin always outshines Charlotte, who remained in second place. Charlotte had always held a grudge deep inside. She refused to accept defeat. Master Zhang, who had been keeping his eyes closed, suddenly opened them and glanced at Charlotte. This girl is impressive. Master Zhang detected that Charlotte's spiritual power was more than twice as strong as an average person's, indicating the potential for her to become a mage. The array activated, and a radiant light enveloped the scene. In the midst of the light, two enormous fireballs suddenly rose, bursting like fireworks. Lu Yun trembled with excitement. An anomaly! A rare profession! The appearance of the anomaly indicated the emergence of a rare profession. Rare profession. Elemental mage. Lu's excitement at this moment was overwhelming. Just a moment ago, he had been mentioning rare professions as a mere wishful thinking. Principal Lu and Master Zhang were both delighted. After Charlotte returned, a group of classmates gathered around her, bombarding her with questions. This was a main combat class profession, and moreover, it was a rare class. Lin heard his name and lifted his foot, walking towards the array. Charlotte watched Lin, her eyes filled with a sense of challenge. Principal Lu glanced at Master Zhang beside him and asked, "How is this child?" Master Zhang calmly replied, "Academic performance and class transfer do not necessarily correlate. You knew this." Lu obviously understood, but he still held on to his expectations. The array activated, erupting in a brilliant light. The once bright sky suddenly darkened, and in the blink of an eye, dark clouds covered the heavens. Chilling winds blew in from all directions, causing the temperature to plummet. Day turned into night, as if doomsday had arrived. Lu exclaimed in astonishment, "What is happening?" Master Zhang fixed his gaze on the array and calmly said, "An anomaly." "A class transfer anomaly?" Lu nearly exclaimed in surprise. Such a massive class transfer anomaly was unheard of. With that, he became agitated. With such a significant anomaly, not having a rare profession would be unacceptable. Charlotte clenched her fist. This anomaly was much greater than the one before. She felt a sense of unwillingness to admit defeat, but judging solely from the anomaly itself, she couldn't help but acknowledge its significance. Suddenly, a student shouted, "Look, there's a movement within the dark clouds." Everyone looked up. Within the dark clouds, flickers of lightning could be seen. Apart from the lightning, there seemed to be something else. Moreover, a crackling friction sound emanated from the dense clouds, causing discomfort in their ears. Finally, a sharp-eyed student caught sight of what was within the clouds, and he was so frightened that he fell to the ground. The dark clouds were filled with countless skeletons. As his words trailed off, the entire scene within the dark clouds was fully revealed. Thousands upon thousands of skeletons stood densely packed, and the flickering flames were the soul fires within their skull. They all slightly bowed, paying their respects to their master. One of the soul fires descended from the sky and landed on Lin. Subsequently, all the anomalies vanished in an instant, and everything returned to normal. Unique hidden class, Necromancer. It was not just a rare class, it was a hidden class, and it was a uniquely hidden class. This meant that there was only one of this class in the entire world. Unless Lin died, there would never be a second person with the same class. Among the students, there were those who congratulated him, those who were puzzled, those who were jealous, those who were disdainful, and those who were afraid. Despite feeling excitement about his unique and hidden class, Lin showed no outward emotion. He believed that emotions should be kept hidden. "Wait a moment," Master Zhang called out to him as he passed by. Lin turned around and saluted Master Zhang. This was the first time Master Zhang had encountered such a class, and he wanted Lin to demonstrate his skills. After checking his attributes, Lin found that besides the basic attributes and level, he had two skills. The first skill was Summon Skeleton Warrior, with 7 levels ranging from Black Iron, Bronze, Silver, Gold, Diamond, Legendary, to Divine. Currently, he could only summon a Black Iron skeleton. The second skill was Soul Flame, which allowed him to burn the souls of his targets, with the power depending on his own spiritual strength and level. Knowing that demonstrating the Soul Flame skill would not be appropriate, Lin chose to summon a Skeleton Warrior instead. Activating the skill, a black vortex appeared beside Lin. Then, a Skeleton Warrior engulfed in flames of soul fire emerged from the vortex. His spirit energy instantly dropped from 20 points to 10 points, consuming half of it. The Black Iron level Skeleton Warrior had gray bones, with numerous cracks all over its body. Even the sword it held was worn and tattered, seemingly salvaged from a heap of junk. The Skeleton Warrior had attributes of 15 across the board, but it didn't possess any additional skills. With the 4 main attributes evenly balanced, the Skeleton Warrior had neither strengths nor weaknesses. It currently lacked any skills and could only perform basic attacks. As the Skeleton Warrior appeared, the students couldn't help but exclaim in surprise and instinctively took a few steps back. People always have a certain level of fear towards terrifying things. Master Zhang's fingertips emitted a gentle glow as he touched the Skeleton Warrior. Instantly, the eyes of the Skeleton Warrior emitted a red light, and the flames of the soul fire within it flickered intensely. Lin noticed that the system detected the Skeleton Warrior being attacked and asked if he wanted to counterattack. If no choice was made within 10 seconds, it would automatically retaliate. Lin quickly recalled a piece of information in his mind and immediately commanded the Skeleton Warrior not to move. This surprised Master Zhangyi, who was level 52, while Lin was only at level 1. The fact that his summoned creature exhibited hostility towards him was unexpected. However, Master Zhang held high expectations for Lin's future and encouraged him to work hard. The Skeleton Warrior followed behind Lin, making clicking sounds and accompanied by chilling gusts of wind, adding to its eerie atmosphere. As Lin was returning, many classmates unconsciously distanced themselves from him. Only Gao Yang approached him. He expressed a desire to touch the Skeleton Warrior, and Lin nodded in approval. Gao Yang gathered his courage and reached out to touch the Skeleton Warrior. It had a touch similar to steel plates, giving off a cold sensation. It was soon Gao Yang's turn to undergo a class transition. Lin looked at the Skeleton Warrior and silently thought, "Recall." A vortex appeared in front of him once again, and the Skeleton Warrior entered the vortex, disappearing from sight. The system displayed that his summoning space now showed 110 capacity. Lin carefully examined the description of the summoning space. The summoning space served as a place to store summoned creatures. Unused summoned creatures could be kept in the summoning space and summoned whenever needed. Summoned creatures called from the summoning space did not require the consumption of spiritual power. As Lin reflected on his class transition, he recalled the vision he witnessed during the process, a vision that was completely different from what others experienced. He saw a dragon, a colossal dragon. The dragon soared through the air, emitting cries of agony from time to time. In an instant, it descended to the ground and thrashed about madly. Lin observed countless skeleton warriors crawling all over the body of the dragon, numbering in the thousands. The skeleton warriors wielded their blades, continuously striking the dragon's body. Each blow inflicted terrifying wounds upon the dragon. No matter how the dragon struggled, it was futile. The transition formation erupted in a brilliant light. Gao Yang's class transition was complete. Advanced Melee Class, Sword and Shield Knight. It turned out that Gao Yang had become a knight, just as he had hoped. Gao Yang excitedly ran back, and for a rare moment, Lin showed a hint of a smile, and even gave Gao Yang a thumbs up. Gao Yang burst into laughter, patting Lin's shoulder. "From now on, we'll tackle dungeons together. I'll stand in front of you." "In that case, let me recall the phrase." Then he tapped his head and said, "If someone want to kill me, he would have to step over your corpse first." Lin was speechless. He couldn't bear this guy anymore and finally spoke up. "You got it in reverse." Gao Yang was taken aback and started laughing. You finally spoke up. I deliberately said it in reverse. Didn't you notice? Lin gave Gao Yang a disdainful look. Finally, all the students completed their class transitions. Principal Lu congratulated everyone once again, and tomorrow their newbie dungeon would be open to all students. The details of the newbie leveling dungeon were known to almost everyone. The monsters inside were concentrated between levels 1 and 8. Moreover, their numbers were few, and the difficulty was low. Charlotte stopped Lin. She wanted to challenge him to see who would achieve better results in the final exam. Lin looked at her with a puzzled expression. He nodded and bypassed Charlotte. She took it as Lin's acceptance of her challenge. Lin returned home. The house was empty, devoid of any presents. He picked up a photo frame and looked at it. The furnishings in the house were very simple, with hardly any furniture. One photo stood out prominently. The photo featured Lin, a young and beautiful woman who was his sister, and an elderly woman with gray hair who was his grandmother. There was a knock on the door from outside. Lu Yun stood there with a package. He had brought some supplies for Lin's daily needs. Lin accepted the food and thanked Principal Lu. Over the past year, Lu Yun had been sending food supplies every few days. It was a promise he made to Lin's sister. Last year, Lin Mo Han was admitted to Xiajing Academy as the top scholar in the Western Sea City. However, at that time, Lin Mo Han didn't want to go because she wanted to stay behind and take care of her younger brother, Lin. Once she went to Xiajing Academy, she wouldn't be able to return for at least 3 years. Principal Lu tried so hard to convey her to attend the academy and promised to take care of Lin personally. After waving goodbye to Principal Lu, Lin went on experimenting his new class. He opened his stat window and checked his 2 skills. Suddenly, a sudden anomaly occurred within the system. The system detected Lin awakening as a necromancer and initiated a binding process with the most powerful talent system. As a result, Lin was bestowed with a new talent, a comprehensive enhancement that amplified all his skill effects by 5 times. In addition, he gained a passive skill called Damage Transfer, which allowed him to redirect all damage he received to his summoned creatures. But both of these can be considered OP skills. The power of this talent is so strong that Lin can no longer accurately describe it in words. Lin activates his skill and summons a black iron-level skeleton. A vortex appears in front of him. At first glance, this black iron-level skeleton in front of him is no different from the one he summoned in the afternoon. Its appearance hasn't changed much, just like the one that came out of the garbage heap. However, its attributes have undergone a tremendous transformation. It has increased from its original value of 15 to 75. The next day arrived quickly, and Lin arrived at the entrance of the newbie dungeon. It wasn't just students from his high school who came to the newbie dungeon. Almost all students in Western Sea City who had completed their class transfers would come here. All of them know that if they formed a team, the experience would be evenly distributed. Based on the advice of the senior players, soloing was recommended for dungeons below level 10. Principal Lu walked over and said that except for Charlotte and Lin, all main combat classes needed to bring support roles for the dungeon. Someone asked, "Why don't Charlotte and Lin need to bring support?" Principal Lu replied, "Charlotte is preparing to apply to Xiajing Academy, and as for Lin, you can ask him if he needs any support." Several support players shook their heads in disagreement. Most of those who chose support roles were girls. These girls were terrified when they saw Lin's skeletal warriors and had no intention of forming a team with him. Lin informed Principal Lu that he also intended to apply to the Xiajiang Academy, making it clear that he did not want to form a team. Principal Lu was surprised by this revelation because one of the requirements to enter the Xiajiang Academy was a minimum level of 12. Lin only had a week to level up from his current level to 12, which would be quite challenging. Lin didn't say much, only expressing his confidence. Before entering the dungeon, Charlotte challenged Lin, saying they would compete to see who could level up faster. Lin neither agreed nor refused, remaining non-committal. Charlotte huffed and tilted her head back, revealing her slender and graceful neck. "If you don't answer, I'll take it as a yes," she declared. Lin released 4 skeleton warriors and commanded them to find and kill monsters. The four skeleton warriors dashed off in different directions. Weaker monsters were quickly slain, and notifications kept appearing as the skeleton warriors continuously found and killed big-eared bunnies. In less than half an hour, Lin reached level 2. He summoned several more black iron-grade skeleton warriors and noticed that their movements formed a map. He looked around and discovered some overlooked monsters. Activating his skill Soul Flame, he instantly killed the level 2 monsters. Soon, Lin reached level 3 and continued summoning more skeleton warriors. Even level 5 monsters were easily dispatched by the skeleton warriors. Lin didn't even need to lift a finger. He simply waited for the experience gains. In no time, he reached level 4. Outside the dungeon, Principal Lu and Charlotte's father were chatting. They mentioned that Su Qianxing and Lin Mohan both reached level 5 in the beginner's dungeon. Charlotte should be close to that level as well. They were all aware that each person automatically exited the dungeon after 12 hours, so it's difficult to get higher level. Xia Dongyang changed the topic and mentioned Lin. He was shocked knowing Lin awakened as a necromancer. He knew dealing with the undead and the deceased inevitably evoked unsettling thoughts in most people's minds. As Lin continued to level up rapidly in the dungeon, 7 hours had passed, but he had yet to encounter an 8th-level monster. However, he noticed that the skeleton warriors could only stray up to 500 meters away from him. Any monsters on the path were instantly slain by the skeleton warriors. After walking for a while, the terrain of the dungeon finally changed. The grassland came to an end, and a forest appeared ahead. Just as he entered the forest, a tree branch lashed out at him with great force. The branch, appearing like a whip, struck Lin, but it didn't cause any harm. His passive skill was in effect, transferring all the damage he received to his summoned creatures. Ahead stood a massive level 8 tree. With a thought, Lin commanded one of the skeleton warriors to attack the whipwood tree. Surprisingly, it wasn't instantly slain. He ordered all the skeleton warrior continue to attack the tree, and after 4 strikes, it fell. Looking at the dense forest with numerous level 8 whipwood trees, Lin commanded the skeleton warriors to spread out and attack the trees in different areas. Their blades kept landing on the whipwood trees, 4 strikes each, swift and decisive. Outside the dungeon, the sky gradually darkened. Suddenly, a brilliant light emanated from the entrance of the dungeon, and everyone looked up simultaneously. Lin emerged from the light. Principal Lu asked how he managed to come out, and Lin replied softly, "I beat the dungeon." Principal Lu couldn't believe his ears and eyes. Lin had reached level 7 in just 10 hours. Lin didn't provide much explanation, but simply applied to go to the outskirts of West Sea City. The shock occupied Principal Lu's mind, rendering him momentarily speechless. Seeing Principal Lu's lack of response, Lin called out to him again and waved his hand in front of his eyes. Principal Lu snapped out of his daze and instructed Lin to take a rest. Principal Lu returned to his desk, and the other principals looked at him curiously. After taking a few sips of tea, Principal Lu revealed that Lin had completed the newbie dungeon. Everyone was astonished and could hardly believe it. Lin continued to replenish his spiritual energy through meditation. By now, he had summoned a total of 24 skeleton warriors, but his summoning space still had 70 vacant slots. After a while, the 12-hour time limit was up, and the students who had entered the dungeon were teleported out one by one. Many of them wore expressions of exhaustion, but even more were filled with excitement. Charlotte emerged from the dungeon as well, having reached level 5. After exiting the dungeon, Charlotte couldn't find Lin at first. She scanned the surroundings with her beautiful eyes and finally spotted him in the distance, deep in meditation. Her eyes widened, and she stood frozen in place, seemingly shocked by the revelation that Lin had reached level 7. As Xia Dongyang waved his hand and got on the car with Charlotte, her eyes couldn't help but glance towards Lin. Xia Dongyang noticed his daughter's gaze and immediately understood what she was thinking. Charlotte snorted, her eyes burning with determination. Xia Dongyang smiled, but also informed Charlotte that Lin had completed the dungeon and come out after 10 hours, having defeated all the level 8 monsters. On the bus, Gao Yang hugged Lin tightly and asked how he managed to reach level 7, pleading to join him in leveling up next time, in which Lin winked and said, "Sure, maybe later." The next morning, Gao Yang couldn't find Lin at the school gate. He then learned that Lin had gone to the outskirts of Western Sea City. It dawned on Gao Yang that he had been bailed by Lin, which explained why he had agreed so quickly the day before. At the Imperial Exchange District, Lin went through the identity verification process. Lin had access to the exchange, albeit with a low-level permission of only level 1. Lin checked the missions available with basic trading and gathering missions, and found one that involved clearing a level 14 dungeon. The dungeon difficulty was categorized as normal, nightmare, and hell, and this particular mission required nightmare level or higher completion. Lin shook his head. He was still too weak at the moment. The city gate guard held the exit permit provided by Lin and verified his information. Although the guard were puzzled by how a level 7 student was allowed to leave the city, the exit permit was genuine, and the city gate guard quickly approved the verification. The guard advised Lin to stay safe and cautious. As he walked out of the city gate, a cold wind blew against him. The sky immediately darkened, and a heavy atmosphere filled the air. Inside and outside, the city felt like two different worlds. Lin sensed the presence of goblins behind him and summoned his skeletal soldiers to attack the level 10 goblin. Compared to his level 7 skeleton warriors, this goblin was too weak. Lin felt excited as he summoned all of his skeleton warriors and charged towards the large goblin army ahead. He clenched his fists, feeling a surge of anticipation. At this rate, reaching level 15 before the major exam shouldn't be a problem. He then recalled how his sister had already reached level 16 before her own major exam, and he wondered how she had achieved such progress. He couldn't wait to see his sister. After a while, his level increased to 10, and his talents and skills were both upgraded. He could now summon bronze-level skeleton warriors. With his greatly increased spiritual energy, Lin eagerly summoned a bronze-level skeleton warrior. The bronze-level skeleton warrior no longer had the gray color, but instead had a pale greenish-white hue. The weapon in its hand had transformed into an axe. Its base attributes were astonishingly high, reaching 1500. Moreover, it possessed a skill called Rampage Strike, which dealt double damage to the target and had a cooldown of 10 minutes. As Lin was about to continue summoning bronze-level skeleton warriors, the sound of a breaking wind echoed, followed by several arrows flying past him. Multiple arrows flew right in front of him, and one of them struck him. His passive skill automatically redirected all the damage to the skeleton warrior, so Lin himself was unharmed. A figure dressed in black emerged from the forest, running at high speed with impressive agility. She noticed Lin and swiftly changed direction, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Judging by her attire, Lin could roughly determine the professions of her as an assassin. Then two-person appeared. They were an archer and a mage. Unable to catch the girl, they asked Lin where the person had gone. Instead of answering, Lin spoke coldly. "You shot me with an arrow. Apologize." The archer looked at the arrow on the ground, realizing what had happened, and also apologized, although puzzled as to why the arrow didn't cause any harm. The mage's expression grew gloomy, clearly unhappy about the escape. He turned his gaze to the skeleton warriors, his eyes filled with disgust, and slowly raised his staff. However, the archer suddenly pulled the mage back and walked the other way. Upon seeing the retreating figures, remarked that these two individuals couldn't be too high-leveled, probably around level 20 at most. If they were to attack him, Lin felt he might have to resort to killing. The bronze-level skeleton warriors effortlessly slaughtered the monsters in the area, as if he was mowing the lawn. However, Lin's leveling speed began to slow down. It continued until nightfall, with Lin still needing 30% more experience to reach level 11. He had no intention of going back. Time was limited, and he couldn't afford to waste it on traveling. He had to work harder than anyone else to attend to Xiajing Academy. Lin set up a campfire in the forest and ate his food, deep in thought. He still couldn't figure out how his sister managed to reach level 16. There must be something he overlooked. As Lin pondered and recalled the memory of his sister returning from the western outskirts with injuries all over her body, he started to piece things together. He combined his knowledge from school with the information and from the outskirt. Suddenly, he realized something.